It's Jan 10th, 2023. I am this morning watching some of the programming that they put on. I've been up since like around 5 a.m. They put on first on this first of all, I discovered yesterday the rotational speed of Mercury. I was watching some movie that came on, and then they had like some gods that they spoke about I had never heard of. So I looked up the mythology on the MaxiPad internet since they gave me a name. This Shazam movie gave me a name. So, and it just so happened to, by random selection. Again, I'm symmetrical, so it's what I needed in the moment, but here we are. So, that came on, spoke of the god Mercury, and I'm like, I've never heard Mercury referred to as a god. It was a god. And then they said it was a Roman god. And I was like, and then I looked, and it's 88. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense at rotational speed, as it is in proximity to the sun, being the SUN, since I hold the SON in this symmetrical theology that already exists, but at several different levels, depending on who's speaking and who's receiving. So there's that. Then this morning, they had on something I'd never seen before called Highway Patrol. Now, in time and space and following the messages, it's black and white. It had symbology that matches the 8 and 8. It has two squares. It's not two triangles, it's two squares. So it has two angles being 8 and 8, which again is that the rotational speed of Mercury that I need to know about. It has three stripes in a, I guess this is vertical, if this is horizon, if they're perpendicular. So I'm watching that. It's a symbol of two squares. I don't know what the two squares is in reference to. In anglais, et per italiano et français, non so, je ne sais pas. In English and in American, I have no idea. I have no ID for the EA reference. So there's that. I also have no idea as an AL reference either, in case, God forbid, that should come up in, I have no idea. So I'm watching this, and then I go back, and it's called Frightened Witnesses. I'm like, oh, how apropos that is in 2023. And since 1978 when I arrived, but I just discovered this, whatever. So I watched it. It had a black and white, although it had no color. So it, of course, is going to be some shade between black and white on the police car or on the patrol car. They use both words. Then later on came Dragnet, in a different, has something to do with subscriptions, magazine subscriptions, and how they raised money, and Merchant Marines, which again I had never heard referenced. I haven't watched this series Dragnet. Nobody directed me that it might be important. So, and how like the human reaction of like my own tribe might react, or what they might be already educated on if they arrived to a tribe that was well put together and not under some form of, I don't know what. So I'm watching that, And then I noticed that in the beginning of this episode, just so the Boston Tea Party and I really would like a cup of tea, gentlemen. The two that you sent on that one birthday were perfect. I don't know why I was put in the back of a taxi cab and driven around by the problematic two. As far as he was under 6 foot, and his birthday was not in the house of August like ours was. Right there. An asymmetrical attack? Yeah, I was under an asymmetrical attack by the House of Symmetry. And no, again, the House of Symmetry is carrying the weight. They know about it. I don't know who designed the asymmetrical attack on my person. So there's that. Then there's, I'm watching this episode for words and the reactions of my own kind prior to my arrival. I'm watching, there's a building, because MFA in Boston is a museum of fine arts. At museums and curators, and like there's an art dealer somewhere that knows that I was promised to somebody that I really wanted to be with. And they've kept him from me, or kept me from him. I don't know which way this is going. And I don't know it for what reason. Then there's, at the beginning of Dragnet, it looks like the MFA building in the EA section that I don't know if the AL knows about. Just saying. I see it. It looks very familiar. And that's the one where I woke up being carried by something I just wanted to, like, I had my arms around, I just wanted to melt into and never leave because he felt safe. His dad works at the MFA and whatever that was about. And that was around my teenage years. So there's that. And it's like, I don't understand, why can't I just be with that person? Why can't I, like, have that level of human touch? I mean, I was his and he was mine, and I was happily to be his and did not want to, like, go back to loneliness and isolation. So anyway, so I see the building that looks like the building from what he referred to as the MFA and wherever that was. In the beginning of Dragnet, but in Dragnet, they say that it's in LA, which is California, for whatever that is on the AL side of things. One having a vertical lift and the other one having a horizontal association between EA and AL. So there's that. Then in current matters and current times, there's a movie actor, I call him Hollywood, as I call all of them Hollywood, Tom Hanks, who just came out with a movie called Otto, O-T-T-O, and then he refers to T, and he refers to a cat. I don't know the movie. I don't know what's surrounding this new whatever, and whatever the humans are up to that they speak about in ways that are some form of nexus, codex, je ne sais pas, no, so I don't know. But that ties back to problems that I had in this season with the crazy donkey or whatever. Now, I also noticed that Mar-a-Lago and this FBI whatever with Trump, on president level, happens to coincide with August 8th. And then I noticed that President Biden is now up with his vice presidency time spent. He's got some global research and equity something or other, and they did a search on 11/2, so on 112, he's got going on something locked in a closet. Not quite sure what that's about. But all these things are starting to come into some form of whatever. And then current events is in the news today. They're talking about 2 hospitals and nurses. They're talking about Montefiore, which is Mount Flower. I respectfully report that because that could be very, I don't want to have to say these things, but it's on the news in light. And then the other one is Mount Sinai, which is the sneeze. I mean, again, depends on whatever's going on in the way that things. And then they say something when I looked up Mount Sinai on like the front face without decoding it. Um, it says on there, um, it has something to do with biblical reference. And I'm like, hmm. But then it ties back to this merchant marine episode on Dragnet that they knew about with some subscription, some magazines where they raised money. Again, so that's confusing. At the end of that, though, the Dragnet episode, they have a nurse. The woman is a nurse. It looks like she's dressed like a nurse. And she has a black cape over her very feminine nurse attire. And then they put her in front of this LA thing, and it says Corona in California, which means crown. It means CROWN. What they are crowning her, I am unclear at this point. But I also, yesterday, there was a woman, she was an Iranian woman, who passed away. The words they used to describe her is a mathematician. And she had not notebook. I mean, I have notebooks of mathematical calculations, sacred geometry, and so on and so forth. But she had these large papers, which I made reference. I taped so I could make reference to it. That it does exist. They don't lock these people up in insane asylums and call them crazy. And I don't know for sure that she's an asymmetrical, but like 99.9% of the population that are over here or that are filmed are, I assume they're asymmetrical. I just happen to know the symmetry between myself, and then I can see in sacred geometry the conception in 1977 before I arrived, which happened to have been sometime in November of 77. And then I see the mention of Brady, who they prop up on this pedestal in sports arena for the NFL. And then F being our side of the water in aircraft. So again, like I see the signs. I see the symbols for how we arrived in this lifelong brother sisterhood thing, and then into the future for Alexander. And those are the like Eckstein or the capstone, and then all else falls in line and in hierarchy for this particular part of the theater. So the signs, the spiritual, the Holy Spirit, like, and interdimensional science. I like in field science, I see it. And anyhow, this woman, I don't know her name, but it's not something familial to me. The letters and the patterning of the words she uses as a name and the sounds that they make are not familiar. But she won some. She was the first woman to ever win something called a Field Award. I don't know what that is. It's something like the really. I don't know if you say it, not intelligent, but like the real. Maybe I mean they use this word so freely and it's so misused. Intelligence and smart, um, educated. I mean things that I was not allowed. I mean they kept me at a very childlike um, learning opportunity here. I, again, that was part of the, I don't know, is that part of the promissory note that I needed to get to someone intelligent enough for the two of us? I don't quite know. But nothing was like, I mean, as far as like merit or merit, Meruit. I learned that yesterday by accident, hearing somebody mention that on the TV. I had to look that one up. So anyhow, so I'm gonna go get those reference pieces. All right, so this highway patrol, first of all, the highway, I don't know if that's like the investors in this area in the Republic and Democratic positions and the oligarchs that were, or the imperial, I'm not quite sure as to who the investors were prior to my arrival. I see someone who looks very much like the dress or the adornments or the pageantry of what something respectable that my grandfather's age would have worn. And this is in a black and white, and it says frightened witness. It then says these words: newlyweds find themselves pursued by both police and criminals. Now, in Star Wars terms, um, I know that I have two House representatives that I could name that are both born on Wednesday for our symmetry, which I think is part of the reason why he was held up so high in his field of whatever he does. Um, this particular episode is S4E1, and it aired. I was able to catch it by remote, universal remote, on Tuesday, Jan 10th, which is today. Um, it said it originally aired on October 5th, 1958. And this is the symbol inside of it that I have not learned. I don't have a word or a name for it here. But the cast was Eddie Davis. So now I know that there's something with David, like King David, I've heard. And then there's Davis, which is, and it has Eddie. Now, I also heard, and again, it feels like rumors. Is it gossip? Is it rumors? I don't know, about this abjucation of some whatever, and then some other person was picked for crown. Really confusing to me, considering that the divine order has specific body requirements by cosmology and astrology for coexistence and for the survival of man. But again, these are things that they throw out there that I've caught on the, like, after the facts, but I don't know if those are really the right words with the correct images. I have no way of verifying that. And it says, here's this Eddie Davis. Um, And again, this newlyweds finds himself pursued by both police and criminals. Like, is that part of like a new nation? Is that like the building or propping up of an existing empire? Like, there's something between nowadays protected airspace and unprotected airspace at AERO. Super important. Didn't stop. Now, in this episode, they have this symbol on the some shaded whatever. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it's associated with. I've never learned it. And on the vehicles, it has a V. It's not a VW. It just has a V. Here's another portion of it. Now this says Me TV. Now is that part of the Mercury? ME in EO me EO. I'm not clear at the moment. I don't know. Oh, but that black cape that I saw on the woman on Dragnet, who they labeled a nurse, she had this black cape. Now, the black cape is interesting because at the Pope Benedict just had this, the 16th, he just had a, here they call it a funeral, but it's a state's funeral. I mean, it's the high level. And I saw they showed pictures of tourists and some of the, I guess, the piazza. I don't really have even a word for the open area, common area, but I saw that it looked like officials walking around in black capes there, which was interesting because I'm like, oh, that's the first time I ever saw that. And then today I was like, oh, now that's interesting. She's wearing a black cape. I wonder if that has anything to do with Rome. And now here's it has the four corners. It's two squares, not two triangles necessarily. But it would be three triangles technically if the lines were drawn, but it has the 8 sides. So I'm not sure about the history of that symbol. I don't know who uses it. I don't know who represents it. I'm just watching something that's airing now, but was something that the humans put on before I arrived. And I'm just trying to figure out in sacred geometry exactly what this is in reference to and how it could relate to my whatever's going on here. Now, the Dragnet reference is S9E14. The highway patrol was S4E1. It says the subscription racket. And it's Dragnet. It says a swindling salesman uses an authentic Congressional Medal of Honor for his credentials. Now, I don't know if that's in reference in modern terms for the person who put together the broadcasting and television, who may have won back then a Medal of Honor, but then they did this internet thing using interdimensional science and a lot of salesmen, a lot of sales pitches, and then paid it. I mean, like it went from magazines coming in the mail, the post, which at some point used air traffic controllers for delivery. Then it went from magazine subscription to television subscription by like some magical science, and now and then Telefonica added on top of it, and now it's internet. And it seems like the speed of this Mercury I mean, we're on Earth, but we've been on a Mercury pace, which now is like, now when I arrived, this is what the televisions looked like. Kind of, sort of. On the side of, they were small. It was by a tube. It was not plasma. It was not LCD, HD, SD. It was tube. It had a radiological smell to it, like static if you got too close to it. But everybody told you to stay far away from it and just watch it from afar, and that was enough if need be. And if the TV guide, because it wasn't something that was really promoted, but it had whatever this control panel was on the television itself. There was no remote capability back then that we had access to at the level that I was born at.
You are watching me. TV, me, my favorite subject. This is the city, Los Angeles, California. It's a big city with a big heart, and it offers a lot. Museums, libraries, galleries, playgrounds, beaches, valleys, and mountains. Angelinos are proud of our new Griffith Park Zoo, which houses animals from all
You say Griffith? Yeah, if it wasn't Benjamin, it was going to be Griffin.
over the world. The king of beasts and his jester. The proud and the profane. Not all of the wolves and jackals who come to Los Angeles are in the zoo. A lot of them wind up in the city jail. My job is to put them there. I carry a badge. It was Tuesday, January 17th. It was cold in Los Angeles. We were working the day watch at a frauds division, Bunko section. The boss is Captain Lambert.
You say Bunko? Again, like, I don't know, at Mercury, speeding, like, rotation around the sun being, like, twice as fast as us on Earth. I mean, like, I don't know if it's twice as fast, but, like, in relation to Earth to the sun and our rotation and Mercury, they seem to spin a lot faster.
My partner's Bill Gannon. My name's Friday. Public Information Division wanted a favor. Sergeant Dan Cook had set up an interview for Lieutenant Ron Brighter to talk about petty bunko artists. He was to appear on a local TV show that afternoon, but he was involved in the fake bank examiner swindle. The captain asked if Gannon or I would substitute for Brighter.
Now, when I look at this Los Angeles police building on the actual badge, it looks very much like the MFA building to me. Not sure if I'm the only one who caught that. But this is the image. I thought it was the Chrysler building when I was on the piggyback ride and I awoke and I was holding on to him, and he told me to close my eyes. He had to show me something, which I did. And then when I opened my eyes, he said, "Look in front of me. What does that building look like?" And I was like, "I don't know. Are we in Manhattan? Is that the Chrysler building?" Because, like, again, I don't really know Manhattan either. And there was, like, a bunch of buildings. I mean, like, I was like, "Is this Brooklyn?" I don't really know the city. I mean, I grew up in the Glen. And interestingly enough, this particular episode mentions something called Glen. But this is very much reminiscent of something called Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Just saying. And I know somebody that loved me once upon a time. His dad works there. So I don't know if that's to help me on this life path and journey based on the fact that I've had somebody who stuck themselves to my shoe that was under 6 foot. He was born in May, and the other one was born in April. And House of August knows it's over 6 foot is your first clue on visual inspect. And, like, the symmetry is incredibly important.
The story you are about to see is true. The have been changed to protect the innocent.
And this says 1967. So, and Dragnet. And it also says Jack Webb.
Teens who have experienced depression.
Now they're talking about a quarter, but it's the head of the quarter, not the quarterback.
Now, let's be fair about this, Joe. You or me, call it. Heads, Friday wins. You mean Gannon does it? You do it. Put aside the magazine scam you're working on for a few hours. Yes, sir. Bill can help you with the exhibits. We're expecting a call on the magazine, kid, Skipper. I'll let you know if it comes in. Take the toys along. 1:05 p.m. We drove to the Hollywood studio which telecast the Jerry Dexter show. It was seen at night, but they taped it in advance at 2 in the afternoon. Sergeant, you're on after this commercial. Those the props? The things you're going to use in the show? He is. Okay, let's stand by. You nervous, Joe? I've been more relaxed. You sure look nervous. Well, I'm not. Nothing to be nervous about. I'm not nervous. You act nervous. All right, have it your way. What? I'm nervous. There's nothing to be nervous about. You said that. Well, it's true. Well, why don't you go out there? Not me. I'd be nervous. Sergeant. Sit down. Just relax, Sergeant. Don't be nervous. Welcome back to the Jerry Dexter Show. We have returned from our film festival of spot commercials. I used to be Jerry Dexter, and if there are no volunteers, I'll continue to be. Our next...
Now, that was a TV displaying a photo. And now I have a TV displaying the photo. So in like theory, it's been proven that it can be done just for like easy peasy kind of a like paper theorem of, I never got to the classroom at that level, but like I can build the dimension in my room sitting just with a pencil and think and quantify and quantum meruit myself, MERUIT, some theoretical possibility, theologian, philosophy. I don't know the words to use because they have not introduced me to such things. And it was a possibility of something I could be interested in and pursue.
Our next guest tonight is going to tell us how some other people make a living, a dishonest living, swindling, honest, gullible people. The Los Angeles Police Department is one of the finest in the nation, so let's welcome one of their members, Sergeant Joe Friday. Sergeant, I read recently that authorities estimate over $1 billion a year are lost by trusting people who were victimized by bunco artists, con men and women who prey on the public. Yes, sir. Can you tell us some of the ways the con men operate these days? For instance, what have you got in that box? Well, sir, there's this. Oh, it's rubber. Could have fooled me. Yeah, fools a lot of people. What's a rubber rattlesnake got to do with a con man? Well, they work it like this. They pick a house, they ring the doorbell, and they tell the owner there's been a report of rattlers in the area. They ask if they can go into the house to check. Naturally, the owner approves. You bet your sweet knees I would. The con man goes under, then comes out shaking this rubber snake. Tells the homeowner, they're there all right, a whole nest of them, and he offers to clear them out for a fee. And what do they charge for this so-called service? Well, whatever they can get away with. $10, $50, $100. And people have actually gone for that swindle? Yes, sir, they're still going for it. What else do we have there, Sergeant? Well, would you say this is a branch of a tree, Mr. Dexter? Yeah, that's what it looks like. A branch or a twig? All right, a twig or an ape's swizzle stick. Yes, sir. A stranger comes to your door and offers to trim the dead branches from the tree in your yard for only 25 cents a branch. Reasonable enough? Yeah. You let his crew go to work. They cut branches all right. Dead ones, dying ones, and good healthy ones. Then from each branch, they cut these twigs. And when you go to settle, they count each twig as a branch, and they stick you with a bill that can run into $200, $300, $400. And people pay it? Sometimes, if they argue long enough, they'll settle for less, but the victim is still cheated.
On that note, there's a nurses' strike going on inside Manhattan right now in Montefiore and Mount Sinai. Interestingly enough, after Otto, Peter, and Jason broke my back and family tree and caused all sorts of disruption over here in whatever, there was no like even pathway to work. I tried going to school to prepare for nursing school. They kept kicking my application out and wouldn't give me entry. They put up different time blocks and whatnot. Meanwhile, it turns out they were funneling through agencies, people from Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, all sorts of places, and filling the nursing positions with them. And they weren't even American bound nursing schools, but they were putting up the blocks. So the nurses here weren't even getting trained and filling these positions that needed to be filled. But now they're on strike. And now, like, I wouldn't go in a New York hospital. Not again. It's disgusting. These are not people I want touching me ever. It's like intrusive.
And by bunkos who have no real knowledge of tree surgery and who frequently kill trees in the bargain.
Well, Sergeant, all of these things sound like petty schemes. What about some of the bigger swindles?
Well, there's this.
I'd have to check with the band first. That looks like it could be a portable still. What is that?
Would you believe a money-making machine?
That makes money?
For the con man, thousands.
Well, what's the gimmick here?
Well, look, I'll show you. They claim that by placing a real $20 bill here, along with 2 pieces of blank paper, and then closing it, turning it on, adjusting the dials, and going through a lot of hocus pocus, the 120 is reproduced on both pieces of the blank paper. Actually, when you twist this knob, it slides back this false bottom here in this compartment where 2 real 20s have been hidden all along.
And some poor suckers believe it actually manufactures money and they buy it?
Well, they either buy it or invest in it. One man bought a machine just like this for $10,000 in cash.
Incredible.
Well, it's people's own greed that makes them victims of the bunco artist, trying to get something for nothing.
Sergeant, how can we protect ourselves against the swindlers who go from door to door?
Well, you're always safe when you deal with reputable established firms with whom you've dealt before, or who are recommended by friends.
Ah, the establishment. Interesting. Problem is that the establishment seems to be broken here. There's a lot of asymmetrical stuff going on, and my symmetrical, like, actuality is being harmed by all this asymmetrical hoopla that's going on.
Thank you. Before we continue, Sergeant, let's take this minute to hear from this.
And I should mention, my grandmother, August, is dead. My aunt, August, is dead. My uncle from August is dead and has been for some time. And my grandfather died in 1996. So I don't understand all of this incorrect action when perfection was expected, and it was already sealed somehow in photos and captured on photo, on human contact and relations between an August representative and myself in my youth, and then in my teens. So I don't understand how all of that care that was given to my symmetry and for what was to come, especially when they made big spectacle out of the Star Wars, and there was big buy-in, there was big announcements about, in like star terms, of pronouncing the 77, the 8-3. It was always going to be August 3rd. It says 8-3 right there. And for that 70s show, the baby's conceived in Clockmaker and Starmaker and arrived 78. Being it's a perfect harmony between a yin and a yang, like between a male and female. One male part 7, female part the 8.
This reputable, established firm who sponsors us. Thank you, Sergeant. Very good, very good. I'll have our floor manager bring these things out to you.
Thank you very much. Can I go now?
Yeah, sure. Good job, good job.
Thank you.
Now here, this is the part about the Marine that I never heard of. Never heard the 10 children that Marie had, or Mariah had, my grandmother, never heard of these Marines. I heard of the Navy. I heard of the Army. Never heard of these Marines. And I just recently met in person through invitation the Christian book of the Marines.
I have stuff. Any Tom, Dick, or Jasper knocks at our door, she'll buy it there.
Maybe she better watch the Dexter show tonight. Hear what Sergeant Friday has to say.
The latest thing is this Marine.
What Marine's that?
He says he's a war hero from Vietnam there. Sold down on some magazines.
Subscriptions?
Okay. First he buys subscriptions to help a girl win some points and get a scholarship to a nursing school.
What about the Marine?
Then she buys more magazines. 3 days later from a foreign exchange student from New Zealand there.
The Marine, Mr. Tate. What about him?
He shows up 2 days later there and sells Marilyn $35 worth of magazine subscriptions one day. And he comes back again less than a week there and sells her $50 worth.
Same Marine?
Is this some kind of a racket?
Yes, sir. We'd like to talk to your wife.
I wish you would. She's home. 10655 Rancho View.
That's in the valley.
Tarzana. Burroughs Estates. It was named after Edgar Rice Burroughs there, the man who wrote Tarzan.
Yes, sir.
We got a few of the old Tarzan movies here. The ones with Mia Farrow's mother, remember?
She played Jane. Johnny Weissmuller played Tarzan with her.
That's right. Elmo Lincoln, he was the first Tarzan there.
Who played Jane with Elmo? What do you say you and me play? Policeman.
Here's her coming in this nurse's gear, but with the black cape over a blue nurse's outfit.
Police officers.
What is it, Glenn? What's wrong?
They want to...
This, I just saw some, and again, I don't have the correct words for it, so I don't want to be disrespectful. They don't speak it here in American. They don't, or the rooms that I've been exposed to or withheld within, they do not speak American words to explain what this is, this fashion, or where the symbol might be elsewhere. I just happened to see because it was the emeritus Pope's funeral. And this is like the most respectful level of language I have on any of these subjects in America, speaking American, and even speaking English because of the whatever's going on with how I was born, the child I brought in, and whatever the surrounding circumstances are that were going on prior to my arrival and that are still going on. I'm going to pause this for a second, and I'm going to go to where this nurse's strike is at the moment, to show the whatever. Now, there was some showing of a symbolic medal. I again, don't have a, do I say scholar, a learned, someone to translate this symbol. I don't know what this means. Again, I see the eagle and I see the stars up here, but I'm not clear. I don't have a clear read on that. I don't know what that's associated with. And it says right here, the story you have just seen is true. The names were changed to protect the innocent. And here on March 20th, which again is 3/2. There's two of us.
20th, trial...
So here they used Norma Bryant and Corona, California.
The suspect was found guilty on 3 counts of grand theft. Grand theft.
And they used Glenn with 2 N's and Procuston. And they used San Quentin and California. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know if you say that the system broke. I mean, I don't think that they like to use that word, but when we had symmetrical meeting in a, again, like, I don't know how to say, it's not on this earth, it's not in this dimension. If this is a time capsule that I am trapped within AERO in some unprotected airspace, or at least that's what it feels like to me, because I've been attacked through airspace, through electronic process, while my feet were here. I've heard them refer to it as Havana syndrome. It's kind of, sort of, but not really. If this all ceases and it goes into some other phenomenon, and it's only the symmetrically rooted at that very particular point, there was something. James Mark Glenn. Again, it was my person. It was my representative. It was my feeling safe. And that was on whatever special marked file is kept in. We don't talk about it. So I'm not talking about it. I'm just making a mark or mention in this dimension that it happened. Now here's the live news coverage in this 2023. It says documents discovered.
Discovered. The Justice Department reviewing classified documents found in a private office in Washington used by President Biden after serving as vice president. Republicans outraged, calling for a special prosecutor to be appointed.
And again, class documentation, like what's classified, what's unclassified, what's declassified. I don't know what those were. I've heard it. I just don't know what qualifies. I don't know what the qualifiers are. I don't have somebody from that knows I'm symmetrical. It's like I'm surrounded by asymmetry, and I don't know where is my support.
A live report from the White House. Candlelight vigil. A Virginia community comes together in honor of the teacher wounded in a school shooting.
That was today, and it was E8, episode 8, and it was Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. I'm going to go real quick to this Secrets of the Surface, the mathematical something, Miriam Mirzakhani is the first woman and the first Iranian to be awarded the Fields Medal. Again, I don't know this Fields Medal. I don't know who gives it, who receives it. I don't know what it's for. But it says the mathematical vision. And my purpose in showing this, which was aired on January 9th, 2023, is just the fact that it is a woman. And she has this mathematical and symbolic notations that she writes in. And there are other humans out there that do this. And it is not that they're mentally broken. In fact, it's in some communities, it's an insult to even intimate that. But I live in a community that wanted to take my writings and my whatever and institutional and hospitalize me like I was some defective whatever. But that's what asymmetry does when you don't give me support. I mean, again, it's not rocket science. It actually is, because it's handled at like rocket science level at like AERO, And I'm amongst like barely graduated high school.
Question. If you hit a ball on a billiard table.
Here's an example of her at the board. Which I don't have to be the one holding the chalk. In fact, the most attractive man in the room is the one holding the little silver thing with the piece of chalk in it at the board. For me, anyhow. But being that I'm stuck in a time capsule in a series of rooms and I have to come up with my own mathematical and sacred geometry and like discover this whole thing for myself, since everything went so horribly wrong and nobody's taking the correct responsibility for it.
And instead of looking at the reflection, just continue the path. And so knowing things about this shape is the same as knowing things about the original billiard.
Now, for the kind of billiard tables Mirzakhani studied,
I was not offered this level of education. I just wasn't. She was better educated than I was. Which again, there's somebody who's intelligent enough for the two of us. And he could have been my teacher if I needed to know things. Now, here are other highly educated and highly qualified people to speak on their friend, this Iranian mathematician, which again, like I have one word that describes this very big, broad stroke, and like, what does it look like? What does it mean? Like, how do you even enter that field? What does it take?
Kind of slowly going up, and at some point we kind of felt like could see the top, but then there is this ravine in front, and then there was a difficulty we really couldn't overcome. It was a little bit discouraging. We basically sank 2 years of immense effort, and we were stuck.
They thought that the problem is basically solved, and then they realized no, there are complications, and it took another several years of very hard work.
But this is what the work looks like for her with a billiard table and solving something I was not grasping, something about a tube and being able to fold it, and like again, I was looking for the word construct to digest the words and the symbols that they used associated with these mathematical principles that I've never been introduced to before. And like I really sat there and I was intrigued by it. In this like moment of, well, it's somewhere between interesting and curious, being like, I need this like Mercury speed like update because like I'm really bored with all of this. But here we are.
Work.
It was a bit depressing when she stayed very positive, but somehow, yeah, basically it was like, I have no idea. What do you? No, I have no idea.
At some point, they made an announcement that they solved the problem, and they used some result which contained a typo. And this typo was dramatic because part of the proof just evaporated.
There was about a year and a half where we had making absolutely no progress. Till the very end, we were not sure we had it. We really didn't know if the whole project would even be done.
Now, like, there are all sorts of doctors out there, but like, they highly revere her. They gave her a field award. They don't call her bipolar, schizophrenic. They don't call her names and say, you should have paid better attention in school. You should have done better in school. Why are you drawing these things and spending? I mean, it's a different form of art as well. But yet, when it was my turn, and it was like, I could see mathematical formula and I was putting in symmetry the way that I was being whatever I was around, whatever I was seeing, whatever I was doing, I get stuck in several trips to the hospital. I get completely disrobed and knocked unconscious by a different blood type and a different ABO completely. First of all, they're not even rhesus negative. They're rhesus positive. And which means proteins and antibodies and antigens are completely in disarray. I don't understand how they got the authority to ever lay hands on me, ever.
So it was incredibly intense experience. And I mean, Mariam was just absolutely amazing, both in terms of mathematics, but also I think there was just a lot of kind of mental stability aspect, which is necessary for this kind of work. And
You see how nicely he speaks of her? I have never in my life had anybody speak that well that stayed in my day-to-day. My father doesn't speak of me that well. My mother doesn't speak of me that well. And my children don't even know who I am. And the rest of the humans are so asymmetrical and irrelevant, it's painful. Now, here's this story on President Biden again.
As Vlad mentioned earlier, we have a developing story concerning the possible mishandling of classified information, first reported by CBS News. The Justice Department is overseeing a review of roughly 10 documents marked classified. They were found in an office space that President Biden used before he was elected. The documents come from Mr. Biden's time as vice president, and their exact nature and level.
Now, when I was young and I was taken to the Glen out of the Citadella, which was already deemed, I mean, like, it was rough. The children were rough. I was rough. They roughhoused me. They were ruffians. They pushed, they pulled, they said the most brash things. I mean, it was whatever. It was not where the European side was happy that I was around, and I have no idea about the Americans because whatever. One was more vocal than the other. And so they moved me to show me, I suppose, the better side of America, which was the Glen, which was the Lloyd Harbor, which was, I was on the poor side of Lloyd Harbor. I didn't live in one of the big estates. It wasn't palatial. It wasn't any of that. It was a square box, which had around 2,000 square feet, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But it was clean. It was up on a hill, and it was in the woods. And it was somewhat secure. So that was the most, I suppose, important at that point in whatever, like, the relations department were doing between MFA and over here, between EU and AL. In my season, being the symmetrical woman born and going to have this symmetrical birth after already having this pre-announcement with Star Wars when we were conceived. The timing, whatever, again, like, time and space does not in the linear. Some people, I mean, there's design, there's intellectual design in the universe, but whatever on that. So now there's these features that are pronounced. The person that I was assigned to, and who's my family member, who I was very happy with here, who told me I needed to wear a skirt and a headband when I came to school to see him, and then sat with me at the blacktop science table with Miss Metz in second grade while he stayed for I don't know how long. I called him Mark King, but whatever on that. I think we were pre-introduced at the Guggenheim estate on their grounds. And there was a photo taken there as well. I think that was Nikki. And then there was this, I'm trying to think about. So there were these photos taken with me.
Well, classification is unclear. Adriana Diaz was first to report this story. Adrian, good morning.
Good morning. 3 sources confirmed this story to our CBS News team. Now, a preliminary inquiry.
Oh, and back then we drove, I was able to leave school grounds briefly and go to Lloyd's Neck because my person was leaving. He was taking something called a helicopter, which I had never heard of. And it was around the same time of the NASA thing that happened with the Challenger. I don't know if it was before or right after that. But they took him out of the school He was taking a helicopter, which I didn't know what that was, but he said it was special. He didn't know if I'd learned about it yet. And in the car, we were able to hold hands, and he said he had, because there was a driver, and it was one of those big black trucks. He said that he had the pen and the register for he and I, and he thought that that would bring me comfort, because that was for our relationship.
By the Justice Department is nearing its conclusion, but as soon as we broke this news, it set off a political firestorm with Republicans who now control the House of Representatives, and they are asking for answers. CBS News learned roughly 10 documents marked classified were found inside this former office of President Biden, right across from the U.S. Capitol. Sources told CBS News the Justice Department launched the review into the matter after the president's personal lawyers found a small number of documents with classified markings in a locked closet, according to a White House lawyer. The documents were discovered in early November while the attorneys were packing up the office at the Penn Biden Center, a foreign policy research institute that the White House said Mr. Biden used as an office periodically from 2017 until the start of the 2020 campaign. The White House counsel's office says the documents were not the subject of any previous request by the archives, and that it immediately reported the discovery to the National Archives, which took possession of the documents the following day. Then Attorney General Merrick Garland asked the U.S. Attorney in Chicago, John Lausch, a Trump appointee, to review the matter and report back. The FBI is also involved in the preliminary inquiry. According to a source, the documents did not contain nuclear secrets, but their exact nature and classification level are unclear. The new Republican Speaker of the House called the discovery
very concerning,
as other GOP lawmakers demanded answers.
Maybe the American people should have had a right to know about it as well. But we'll have to see what these 10 documents are.
It is illegal to keep classified material in an unsecured location, but sources say it is not clear whether any crime occurred or if anyone will face charges.
If there was some other nefarious purpose or criminal intent behind that, that remains to be seen. But this just could be a case of sloppy record keeping.
The classified documents in Mr. Biden's former office were discovered on November 2nd, about 3 months after the FBI executed a search warrant at former President Trump's Florida home.
So, on one side, because now we've got the elephant and the donkey here, we've got Mercury over here at an 8-8, and you've got, I don't know what to call it, on an 11-2 over here in November.
And office. That's after he refused to comply with repeated requests to return the materials. FBI agents laid out on the floor some of the more than 100 seized documents marked classified. President Biden was critical when he spoke to Scott Pelley in September for 60 Minutes.
how that could possibly happen, how anyone can be that irresponsible.
Former federal prosecutor Scott Frederickson says there are key differences between the Biden inquiry and that involving former President Trump. How significant is it that these documents were self-reported, voluntarily turned over?
I think the self-reporting here is probably the single most important part of this situation. It indicates a lack of intentional conduct. It's completely different from the Mar-a-Lago case, which tends, based on reporting, to indicate there was intentionally activity to take those documents.
But Monday night in a post, Trump asked, when is the FBI going to raid the many homes of Joe Biden, perhaps even the White House? A source familiar with the review tells CBS News the documents are currently located in a secured government facility known as a SCIF here in Washington. Once the Attorney General reviews the inquiry, he will then decide whether there should be a criminal investigation by the FBI or even a special counsel. Gail?
Oh boy, Adriana, I'm still wondering if anything is marked classified and how it leaves the White House to begin with, but that's a whole nother story, I'm sure. But as you just pointed out, there is a difference between the former president's situation and this one. But are there...
But here's my thing with this new, going back to DRAGNET, what does stealing one's nationally secured information look like in broadcast and journaling? I'm just curious. now there's this like Buckingham, just as an example, because it's the only example they ever give me on this thing. If Buckingham Palace, according to Prince Harry, has this press office, and they are in control of the family secrets and the family, I mean, it's business on a world scale. They have a lot of responsibility. I don't begrudge them that. I get that. And then there's others that I don't even know about, I don't have words for, I don't have names for, that also exist. And then there's all levels of partnership and investigative types and things. And now in this piece where I am at the moment, like what qualifies as stealing information from the nationals that are here in good faith? And I mean, I'm just waiting for my relationship to be whatever fixed. And they have me now, they made like the insult to my intelligence is now inside my father's home, inside Lewis's home. And now I'm not talking at like a parallel paradox. I'm talking like the man's sleeping in the front room. I'm in a completely different compartment. But like if it was a boat on the water, why wouldn't they have removed the problem back in 2017 or 18, or better yet, 2010 when it first arrived? It should have never been around Alexander and myself. But yet it just kept festering, and there's no way to like, I mean, this is so frustrating. And it feels like it's designed in such a way where like the ability to do things within where certain like night court wants it to be done within. I don't even have the resources. I was struggling just to keep food on the table and a roof over my head, which only benefits the first attempted murderer, who literally hands around my neck kind of a murder, not in like a storybook whatever. I mean, there's been a lot of domestic abuse at multiple levels against my person while I've been here. And I just don't know where the support is. I don't know who the supporting characters are. The only one that I could read correctly, because there was a big announcement before we arrived, and he's the only one that they've ever put up there, would be Brady. I don't know why. I don't know who made that choice, but it's a lifelong thing. I mean, he and I can't get away from our astrology. And I have real serious things going on, so who do I report it to? Only House Representative I see is he. And then like a close second maybe would be Hemsworth, but he was born in 83. So great, so he's like the Jedi. In our magic escalator of stars that I stumbled upon that have the correct whatever, not that I actively research it, he just happens to be one, and he's the one who came out with the movie on the 78. So, and he's the Thor, the Thunder, so and both of those representatives happen to be over 6 foot, so they fit another criteria that is known about for my being the size of a rocket. There's somebody admirable somewhere that knows these things. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxies, broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.